But before we can get to courageous leadership, we have to acknowledge that courageous leadership requires some courageous decision making. So I want to start out by telling you the story and some details about the decision that I had to make in my life, which required the most amount of courage, which required me to really draw from that well of courage more than any other. I was 38 years old. I had a 6-year-old son at the time, and that son is now 20 years old. And I had been married for 12 years. And the big decision I had to make was whether or not to stay in that marriage. The first things that were going through my mind as it became clear that I needed to make this decision was probably decisions that run through the minds of many people who encounter this decision. I was thinking, this can't happen to me. I come from the Salvadoran Brady Bunch. My parents were married till death did them part. I'm a devout Catholic. I take marriage very, very seriously. My parents raised me in a way that has impacted me so greatly. Their own lifelong happy marriage was something that is so important to me that I can't imagine, that I can't replicate what they did. So essentially, the first things that went through my mind as I was making this decision was, I'm special, I'm important, this shouldn't be a decision that I should have to make. So the first lesson for me in terms of figuring out how to draw up that courage to make this decision is that I really had to lean into humility. I had to lean into this idea of it's not about perfection, but it really is about thinking about something bigger than me. So in terms of the humility, and it really was realizing that I was no different than anyone else. I was making a decision that many had made before me, that many would make after me, who each felt as though it was something unique to them. And as I started thinking about this humility and really allowing myself to understand that those feelings that I was having of, I'm going to be a failure, I've failed at something and I don't fail at things, really drawing into that humility and leaning into it allowed me to do a couple of things. The first was that I sought counsel. And like many people who are going through something difficult like this, I had mostly kept the details of what was going on in my marriage to myself. And it was this incredible feeling of freedom to know that I could actually talk about these things, that I could actually seek counsel, whether it was from my friends, from my family, from my priest, from other people around me, but also that I could actually start looking at, what went into this decision. So that idea of leaning on others and leaning on other, not just people, but ways of helping me find the answer, certainly was a humbling experience, but also made it clear that freedom that I felt. I remember thinking to myself when I made the decision that I knew it was the right one when the very first sense that I got was a sense of relief, more so than a sense of sadness or anger or some of the other feelings that I'd been carrying around with me for some time. So that feeling of relief. And then the second thing that this humility allowed me to do was really focus more on not only myself in terms of seeking counsel, but I started to think, well, what are the other ways in which this experience might be something that actually turns out to be a good thing? What are the positive sides? And I drew upon one experience in particular. My father, with whom I was very, very close, passed away at a very early age. I was 24 years old. And I remember thinking at the time that as sad and difficult as it was to lose him so young, one thought that kept going through my mind was, if I had to choose between having a phenomenal father for 24 years or a horrible father for 50, I'll take what I got. This is, definitely the better of those two choices. And it was sort of that mentality that got me to this place again, that, there's something to be learned from this experience and the way that I'm making this decision that will one day allow me to give that person who will be able to give counsel when someone else is going, not necessarily even through the exact same experience, but something similar. And then my mind shifted and I started thinking not so much on what I would lose, but what I might gain. So it allowed me to really reset my priorities. And that was where this focus came in.